Oh gosh, the guys, it's that time. I've been looking forward to this so much. And I've had one of those crazy days, but man, Ryan Skeffington, how are you tonight? I've been looking forward to this for so long. How are you tonight, brother?
I am so excited. I was pacing around in my living room at 7:30, like a little bit nervous, a little bit excited. I want to tell you the story is when I was younger, we'll get into this. Halo 3 was my game of games. Me and my brother dove into it, played free for alls, played doubles, ranked and everything. And we met a guy in Florida. His name was Matt. His gamer tag was Vexum. He was the coolest guy in the world. He was in college. We were in high school. And we never got to meet up. We never got to say what's good. We never got to make that connection. This feels like I'm making that connection for the very first time. Like we've had this on the calendar for a month now, and it's
Yes.
real.
It is. It's come to fruition, as they say, right? Some people, I guess. It's a new word for me, actually. I'm not gonna
It's a
act like
good
I've known.
word.
It is. I like it. Just sounds good. It kind of comes off the tongue like, it's nice. But
And
and then like you can use it in so many different ways. So, oh
you're in
man,
your writing phase right now, so you're gonna find that you get words that just feel right. So my book is a little bit dark, a little bit gritty, and the word guttural is
oh,
just a word that I go to so often.
and that's one of those words that you almost don't even need to know the definition. It just sounds and feels like what it means when you say it or hear it or read
Yeah,
it.
there's a certain level of intensity of saying the word. Like the
Yeah.
context is not needed, but of the situation that it's in, it just makes it all the more powerful.
It's so fun, man. And I I try a lot of times, well, every time I talk to somebody, I'm like really well. I was going to say really prepared, and that's never the case. But I try to be as prepared as I can with the time that I have, and I have usually a pretty good idea of what I'm writing down as far as questions. It's been in my mind so long, just the stuff that I've learned about you, and then getting to know you through your book, which is an experience like I talk about a lot. I get to talk to you. A lot of people, they read this book, and that part's not usually a part of that experience, and it's very cool. But I don't really know where I'm going with that, other than the questions that I normally have didn't work for me in this setting because it was already in my mind. So um, I was telling Ryan a little before we came on that I sent, I was like trying to write these questions out, and it's a rough roadmap, but I'm just going to go with my heart on this one. It's going to come out very naturally. So, and he also let me know before coming on that he's very comfortable talking on camera, which is something I had to get used to. So, you said you did what for years?
So I was a Twitch streamer for 2 years. After I got laid off from my very first job out of college, I was like, okay, what can I do in the meantime while I'm waiting for my next job to come around and just spend some time with? And we'll get into it later, but I have a very bad habit of monetizing my hobbies, and Twitch did that for me. And so when I first started streaming, I was awkward. I struggled. I didn't know how to fill space because when you're a Twitch streamer, there is no second person to talk to. And so you're talking to chat the entire time or you're playing your game. And when there's zero people on your channel, it's so incredibly awkward because you have to entertain that person who comes in for maybe 7 seconds. And that's all you got if you don't entertain them.
I can relate with that. Not like so YouTube's a little differently. Like you kind of it just kind of builds over time, and you get a little more used to the numbers. And I my wife does TikTok live sometimes for her business, and um, that's very similar. She had that when she first started out. It's like okay, there's three people watching. Well, it's like you have to stay in the same as if you're talking to 500 people, right? Because that's what your goal is, kind of like dress for the job that you want. You have to speak the way that you would speak if 10,000 people are there. So I think being comfortable learning how to fill that space with dialogue or talking about, in our case, a book is it's something you learn as you do it. And it's just part of the process, which is I've come to find out is embracing that process, whether I'm talking with an author about that writing process or a publishing process or whatever the process may be. I love hearing about it. So we're going to go many different roads in this conversation, but let's start here in the most genuine way. Tell us about book one in the infinite existence. Say infinite
Existence.
existence. I don't know why I was saying infinite exist, but infinite existence. Book one, Lost Souls. Which guys, we're gonna get into it. So go ahead.
So I came prepared.
All
So this is
right.
book one of
It looks like
the
mine.
yeah, it is book one of the Infinite Existence series. It details the life of an individual who struggles with finding his purpose, um, overcoming the, I guess, monotony of a life assigned to him, not the one that he wants. The very real human experience of overcoming loss and trying to make a difference in the world. All of these emotions are something I went through in my 20s. And so this book was sort of my way to put my heart onto paper so that I could understand what I was feeling, because I just didn't have any other way to do that.
That's I something I hear not a lot, but when I hear it and read those type of books, those ones that I was talking to Crystal Matar last night, and just how she used a time in her life to influence and have that thing to grasp for, that thing to hold on to, going through a hard time, and to hear that was kind of part of your process of making this book come to life, man. I could feel that too. This book is emotional. It's compelling. There's times where it's brutal. It's got really, it checks a lot of boxes for me, and to hear how it was a part of your process in a personal way, it makes total sense. Yeah. So
And
would you
I
go a little bit into like that, the themes maybe a little more that you explore in the book, or go ahead? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
absolutely, no, you're good. And I think it's something I stumbled upon. I have been a closeted creative my entire life. When I was younger, I was really good at math and I loved playing with Legos. And so they were like, "You're an engineer." And I was like, "Sick. What's an engineer?" And they're like, "It's a person who does math and makes tons of money." And I'm like, 14-year-old Ryan is like, "This is the greatest idea in the history of ideas."
Yeah.
And so I took calculus in high school and was like, "This sucks." Um, and so I tried different creative outlets like writing, photography, woodworking, painting, and then just one random day, which I'll tell that story in a little bit. I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I should write a book about it."
Hmm.
Um,
That
and then all the themes of Lost Souls came from what I knew. And that's something that through watching YouTube, it was like, write what you know. Here's what a story is. It has a beginning, middle, and an end. Here are the tropes. Here are the X, Y, and Z of writing a novel. And, it's just a bunch of words all scrunched together. And then a book appears at the very end. It's not very good after the first draft, but, you make it good. And let me call out Aaron real quick, Bibliotheory, who's on the screen right now. And for every listener, every reviewer, every YouTuber, interviewer, the power that your words hold for an author is infinite. When I get a review or I get 5 stars, or if I hear someone say that they liked my book, my heart fills with a joy that is almost indescribable. So thank you to everyone who reads the book and leaves a review or talks about it or tells me about it. And that's for any author for any book.
I think we've got a genuine person on the well, on my end, the other line here. It's cool to hear an author's side of that, because I guess we get lost in that. Well, I've been lost in it before as a reviewer. You see on like Twitter or whatever social media you're on, and it's like, review this, review that. But then when it comes down to that personal aspect of, I've written a book, I've sent my baby, because that's what this is to Ryan, guys. That's his baby. In a lot of ways, it was an emotional thing that brought this out of him. And he sends this. And how, first, before I kind of finish that statement, when you send that first copy to a reviewer, everything's done, it's been edited, covers good, that final product, how does that feel? Is that a little bit intimidating?
So I'll tell this story two ways, because I think the feeling of people reading your book is powerful. So the first would be to the reviewers, super nervous because I don't do a whole lot of research on who I send it to. I'm like, you have open DMs on Twitter, I'm sending you the book. If you give me an address, you're getting a physical copy. I am just so excited to share this with people because feedback is my cocaine. Like, it is amazing. You say, I love this sentence, and I'm like, yes, I need it. I'm ready to write the next one. And so I get so excited. And then my family has read the book. And there's a lot of real aspects of Ryan Skeffington in this book that I don't talk a lot about, that I just haven't processed with my family before. And so there are some very real moments in this book. I don't know if you've gotten there, but it's not a spoiler. But the main character, you're done? Okay,
yeah,
fantastic.
I'm getting ready to drop my review tomorrow. I was going to say,
my gosh!
Yeah,
that's sick. So it's towards the climax of the book, right before we start. The main character has a memory, and he's missing somebody, and he talks about missing the 5 o'clock shadow that feels like sandpaper when your cheeks scrape against each other in a hug. And that is my dad to a T. He hated facial hair. He would shave twice a day if he needed to, because at 5 o'clock when he got home, we'd all run home, give him a big old hug, and he would just sit there and scrape his cheeks against ours, and we'd pull back and scream. And that's just one of the greatest memories ever. And being able to put that in a story and share the legend that is my dad with the world is the most special feeling in existence. And so people and my family and people who know me reading this, I was terrified. I was vulnerable. But I've gotten good thoughts, good reviews, good feedback, and hopefully they go on an emotional journey like everyone who doesn't know me.
You're not allowed to make me cry during this, by the way.
I'm gonna cry. I guarantee it. I didn't message you because I wanted to try and not to, but it's gonna happen. I'm hydrated. We're prepared.
I told my wife, I was like, it's not very hard to make this guy cry anymore. And I'm telling you, dude, my wife's book, Mama 87, the dedication page, man, and just you telling that story is very touching. And I'm glad that you brought that up. I think I don't think there's any better way to pay the legend, my dad, man. Just imagine my kids saying that. It's very touching. I think a lot of people can relate with that. And then also having that a part of your book, your creativity, man, there's just nothing more special, I think, in my eyes ever. So I think that's incredibly cool.
I want to highlight EL's most recent comment, the legend that is my dad. So Skeff is my name. It's been my name since I was 5 years old because in first grade, there were 4 Ryans and we needed a way to differentiate. Later in my childhood, maybe late high school, early college, we don't know where it came from. We don't know where it popped up, but his name was Big Papa Stud Daddy Skeff. And to know that you now know the personality that was my father. It was larger than life, and he is just the coolest dude in the world. And I am sorry if we get away from the book because I can talk about my dad for 2 hours. And that's kind of why I wrote this book, is I just miss him. And we'll get to Book Mama's comment. I'm going to read the dedication because you've been talking about it and you're like, we're gonna hear it on the live stream.
I'm so glad you want to read it.
I'm gonna segue us first because you always bring up your wife every stream. You only talk good things about her, talk about how supportive you are, your love for your kids and your family. that is an A+ thing in this world in my heart, and I just want to highlight how awesome that is that you do that every stream.
Thank you,
So
man. I appreciate that. I really do. You go through life with somebody, and you have your ups and you have your downs. But the thing is, they're always like they're that person that's right there with you. And I think that anybody that has that should highlight 100%
I
into my
think it's a
man
great
Ryan.
example. I think young men need positive examples. I think TikTok and Instagram and YouTube algorithms based on the way that they're coded and respond to um, controversial topics, young men get exposed to not great
Yes,
influences and role models. And so I want to make it a priority to be a positive role model to young men, to men my age, and maybe men who have 4 children and can know the impact of how an awesome dad affects their life. So let's get into this dedication that I'll tell the beans after. The dedication is to my father. When you left us, Superman went back to only being in the comic books. So my dad is bigger than life. And I was just sitting on the couch one day scrolling on Instagram Reels, and a Kobe video came up. And Kobe and my dad would have got along great. My dad had the Mamba mentality. He wrestled in Minnesota 2 weight classes up from his wrestling weight, and he was state champion. So he was spectacular at what he did, and he was ruthless. And that he only exists in the comic books, or he went back to the comic books, was one of the comments there. And I just started bawling because those words were instantly no longer about the video that I was watching. It was about my dad. And I was like, oh my gosh, how powerful words are.
I've never had. I remember. So when I got your book, it was a regular day, this and that, and I just remember like reading that, and I just remember going, oh. And I looked at my wife and I handed her the book. It's like I don't think any other dedication will ever beat that for me. I think it was one of the most special things ever, dude. So thank you for sharing that. And then it happened perfect. It was like full circle because I never wanted to. I talk about it in the other lives, but it happened the perfect way. You read that, and I think that it was perfect, brother. So I appreciate that so much, man. I think just looking over at the chats. Chris, you've touched a lot of people. Chris Navo, glad I caught Ryan's story. Bibliotheory, of course, man. He's solid, dude. Soul Free Wolf. Thank you, sweetie. Proud of my beardy. Thank you. And Montague, let's hear it for the dads, right? Dad gang. And Charlie, yeah, dude. That dedication hits hard. It does, man. It's just one of those. Um, Bibliotheory has a question. He says, I always feel weird calling him Bibliotheory, though.
Same.
So I'm
Let
just
me
going to
call
call
you
you.
Aaron.
Yeah, so I'm just going to. So we're friends, so I'm just going to call you Aaron. But I'll go back and forth so people know who the hell I'm talking about. By the way, do you still do Twitch stream? What games?
So I don't do them anymore because it took too much time and I could not commit to a schedule, which is something that you need to be successful on Twitch. Um, I loved it. I had so much fun doing it, but life happened, and I just felt like I was getting pulled away from life to try and make a hobby happen that I wasn't in love with anymore. And so, like, I still game, and I do it every chance I can get. And we'll talk about maybe later about like if I don't want to write and I sat down to write and I just don't want to, and League of Legends pops up, I'm playing League of Legends. So I can't be bothered to force myself to write, but I
Can't be
love it, so
bothered.
I do it. The games that I played when I streamed was Fortnite and Warzone. So big when the battle royales
Ooh,
were up in the world, and Ninja and Tim the Tatman and Dr. Disrespect were all huge, and they were making $10 million a day with 1,000 subscriptions. And I was like, that could be me.
man.
And it stunk because my very last stream was my best. I was streaming all summer long while I was jobless. Got a job, and I was like, all right, it's the last stream before I got my new job. Let's do a 12-hour all day live stream to celebrate me getting a new job. I averaged about 6 viewers my entire summer. That stream, I had 75 people in there and made like $300. And I was like, I was
Yeah.
this close.
It's like this is just a natural order of things. It's like, of course, it would happen this way.
Yeah,
I
but
think
yeah, it was great.
I think that was a good way to for Twitch to say, uh, "Good luck in your future endeavors. We're gonna go out with a bang real quick. I hope you have a great day, and here's to the new job." Right?
Oh yeah, it was them celebrating me getting a job, which was fantastic. And if you ask my dad, was the best thing. He was like, "Why don't you have a job at Target? You just got laid off. You should be applying to 3,700 different places, minimum wage job, pay your bills, get a job, and then 8 hours after your 8 hour shift, be applying to jobs."
Yeah.
But at the same time, he did say, "Do I need to pay your mortgage this month?"
Wow.
So he pushed me to become the man that I am today, but he was always there if I ever needed him. One of his dreams was buying 10, 15, 20 acres and creating the compound
Oh
where
yeah.
after we had tons of kids and he had grandchildren, he'd have 4 or 5 houses on the property, and everyone could just come over to his house. We'd have dinner, we'd watch football, and then we could all go our separate ways. But we wouldn't be so far away that he couldn't stop by.
I man, it's funny because I'm listening and there's so many points, but to touch a couple, if you guys have ever watched anything about Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality, it is to be compared to that type of mentality is very special. The tenacity, the respect, again, the respect that is respect is so big to me. And throughout this guy's career, he pushes himself, he pushes his loved ones to be all that they can be. It's like, don't take everything he was about, man. And again, to compare somebody to that is a high honor. And also, who doesn't want to like have a bunch of kids, them have a bunch of kids, and then the compound idea? That's super cool. Absolutely, like
It's pretty slick.
far enough away. It's like, all right, I need some alone time, but like I want you back. So you're just right there. I get it. I get it. I love that. Josh Walker, another wonderful kind of break-in author, right? I've found about the break-ins on Discord. So it's a wonderful thing that they've got. Are you a part of that Discord? I mean, you certainly.
I'm a part of a few Discords, but I don't know if I'm part of the break-in specifically. But I have been seeing them on Twitter, and they've been taking it over with a fury. It's been
Yeah,
awesome to see.
it is, but you totally meet that criteria, and I love that the it's just another kind of uh, saying something more about the community. It's I talk about it a lot. The writing community, the reviewing community, everybody a part of this whole process. Just it's so lovely, and I never used that word lovely, but I don't really think there's any other word that kind of encompasses the feeling I get. I'm at home. It's like people don't get into politics or like too much religion, and it's like I can relate to most everybody in this community. I love that.
I think as you get older, if you continually mature, you realize the different types and levels of love. And as a man, if you're mature enough to accept it, you open your heart to different kinds of love. So as a kid, you have familial love, and you love your mom and your dad, you love your siblings, and everyone else is kind of icky and gross and outside. And
Yeah.
then you turn 15 and you're like, I like girls now. And then you're exposed to the type of love where you want to find a partner and you want to be intimate with somebody. And then you get a little bit older, and then you understand that there's brotherly love, there's friendship love. There is love for a concept and a community, and it's okay to say lovely. It's okay to love things because there's more than one type of love. And that's what I
Yes.
have found in BookTube is everyone here is so nice.
Yeah, man. And I like that point too. That's deep in many ways, but it's also like as you again you mature, you start to find these. For me, literature is one of those loves that I found as not. I mean, I'm not old, but I certainly ain't young. It's like 29. I find this lovely hobby that it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought that I would ever enjoy this, and now all of a sudden I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop talking to the people who create these wonderful novels. So yeah, man, I like how life has that journey, right? It's never the straight line. It's always these side roads, and those always are the most interesting, right? Um, I'm glad you covered that. So this is a pretty broad, vague question, and I'm just anxious to hear why
Mhm.
science fiction.
I don't think I ever connected with fantasy as a kid. Part one of that, and then part two, I always had a special draw to space.
Mm.
And so space always equated one for one with science fiction for me. And uh, it's where I grew up. Halo was the game that I played from age 14 to 18, my formative years, and where I spent a whole lot of my time. And then I made sure to check this before we started. Dune came out 3 months before the idea for my book. And I had just watched it. And I was like, one, I already love space, but the way Denis Villeneuve showed scale with his ships and
Uh,
his atmosphere and his architecture and his conflict, the big grandiose. I was like, that's what I want. That's amazing. And I know that you can get that in fantasy, but my heart didn't yearn for fantasy. It yearns for space lasers.
I I would never. It's one of those things. I'm going to say again. I never would have thought I was going to say what I'm about to say, man. After reading, so there's only a few science fiction books that I've read. Okay, yours being one of the very few, and the reason being is I just realized my intense passion for it. And now I'm like only reading, aside from John Gwynn, I'm reading John Gwynn at the moment. But like Christopher Rocchio, J.C. Byrne was actually my very first, and Red Rising. I'm diving into all of these, and the biggest reason is what you just covered. Fantasy can be massively epic, but for some reason, when it comes to uh, really expand it for me, my imagination. Space. It has a way of making my mind go, wow, I didn't think that I could read a book and visualize in my mind something so massive. Um, for example, Christopher Rocchio's world that he's built, well, more than a world, this whole entire universe that he's building. And it's just really cool. It challenges me. That's another thing. It challenges me. It's not something that comes natural. I love it, but it doesn't come easy because again, I didn't start this when I was younger. So I love that you covered that. It just blows your mind. You've had similar experience. Dune is one I haven't read yet. I've watched the movie, well, the newest movie, and really enjoyed it.
I loved the Dune movie so much that I listened to the Dune audiobook in 2 sittings.
Oh wow!
Um, I had to drive to Aspen, Colorado from Oklahoma City solo, and so I just threw on the audiobook there and back, and it was phenomenal. So I cannot wait for the second book.
What a
And I
nice visual ride that would be too. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, it
interrupt
was fantastic, and the beauty of the movie was it allowed my mind to have the visuals that they were talking about in the book, because I
you.
struggle with audiobooks. I ADD of the mind, and so they'll say 5 sentences, and I'm like, "What is that thing that they were talking about?" And then have missed it. And so I
Yeah.
watched the movie, and I was able to keep track. Um, and I think when you were talking about sci-fi challenges you, I was able to put some better words to it. fantasy for me feels like you're thinking of the past or the history of a era where technology isn't prominent, and sci-fi allows you to dream of the future.
Mm.
And I'm always forward looking. That's just the way my brain operates, I guess. And so sci-fi allows me to come up with things that don't yet exist. Fantasy, I think, has a lot of established tropes, a lot of established races, and you just have to kind of put your soul into that world. Sci-fi lets you take your soul and create something new.
I like you know, and this obviously isn't a blanket statement, but fantasy has those lovely that I absolutely adore. Those tropes that you're speaking of, and yeah, I had never thought of it in those aspects. Like when it comes to sci-fi, it's like I don't like have an idea really going into it of a trope, perhaps. I mean, I know they're going to be there, but with an epic fantasy, I have an idea of what it's going to be like. And then because of that, the experience is very, I hate to say predictable because, but that's the word I'm going to use. With sci-fi, man, it's just so much that people can, I, I'm kind of losing myself in this, but there's
I
so
would
many different
say
areas.
you're
Go ahead.
allowed to take creative liberty in sci-fi that you don't get permission to from your audience in fantasy.
Oh yeah, I like that. I really like that. And yes, 100%. And that's new to me, which is it's something really fun to discover. And when you come across something that's so profound and influential that you previously had maybe thought you wouldn't be into, it's very refreshing to say the least. To have this deep love for something you never thought possible is incredible. And your book is absolutely guiding me along that unforeseen love for that sci-fi feel, that sci-fi challenge. One
Remember
of
what I said about words and reviewers and filling my heart with joy? You're doing that on purpose.
no, I just being, it's really kind. In fact, I feel kind of stupid because I'm always like coming up with things like this on the spot where I haven't really previously thought about it, and I'm like trying to explain myself. And I think that's maybe the writer in me wanting to come out and be a little at the same time a perfectionist, which I'm currently trying to work on as well. But yeah, man, it's really refreshing. Absolutely love it, and to be a part of what you're doing and to see what I think is going to be an incredible journey for you is 100% an honor. So 100%.
I would say writing is giving your brain the ability to say what if, and live interviews are just that opportunity. You don't have the ability to create an outline and then write prose and then delete it in a live interview. You got to fumble through it, and sometimes the brain takes a second. You need to go spark, form the thought, come up with the words that kind of get to the point that I'm trying to say, share the message with people, and hopefully they'll get the picture of what I just literally created in my mind. And then you don't get to delete. We're just going forward.
But also at the same time, it's like the most genuine. I would feel like the answers I get that maybe wouldn't have been rehearsed, that whether I say it or I get that from an author, whether it's one of those things you got to think about or take a second. That's why I love lives. People have sometimes said, "Hey, I would love to do a recording," and I'm just like, just really not my thing because it's the human in us that comes across in a live, and I just 100% adore that.
There
Um,
are no mistakes when you can edit into jump cuts.
yeah.
And making mistakes is human. And in writing, we edit the mistakes away. But you read draft 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I had 12. So all 11 drafts prior to final had mistakes, had things that needed to be fixed, could be improved, could be molded, could be said a little bit better. Live, you get one shot.
Yeah. It's something. Anytime I have somebody on the channel, they're being very brave. Because, like you said, man, you don't get a chance to
This
rehearse
is on the internet forever.
ever. And if you don't believe him, look it up. See if you can truly ever get rid of something that's on the internet.
Yeah, I have a video clip of me doing a shoey on the internet because someone paid me $10. And if you can find that clip, I'll give you the $10 to send it to me. And for anyone who doesn't know what a shoey is, it's, I believe, origin of Australia. You take your shoe off, pour in a beer, and then shotgun the beer out of the shoe. And my stream said, take your dirtiest shoe and do a shoey. And I was working in the oil field at the time, so steel toe boot shoey is on the internet somewhere.
That is a man's job, people. And if you don't believe me, look that up as well. I know I have a couple buddies, and I've looked into do it myself in the past, and oh my gosh, that's a man's job.
I would consider light work in the oil field. I got a company truck. I got to sit in the air conditioning. But when I was out on site doing equipment repairs in North Texas, 100, 105, 110 degrees, you have to wear clothing called fire-resistant clothing, FRCs. Jeans, steel-toed boots, long-sleeve shirt, hard hat, sunglasses. And the jeans are essentially like Kevlar. So they hold moisture, and they're sticky, and they're heavy, and you literally go through 2 gallons of water a day, and it's all in your clothes by the end of the day.
And every man in here that is like hearing that description of jeans are like, oh my gosh. Yeah, there's quite a few jokes I could probably drop, but this is, we're trying to
we should consult Joe Abercrombie about that.
Exactly. You know me.
Oh man.
So kind of my next the series Infinite Existence kind of really plays into this next question. Your thoughts on Xantium. Kind of, it's not a spoiler. This is like within the very first 2 or 3 pages, guys. Kind of explain what Xantium is and your thoughts behind it, writing it.
Absolutely. So I guess we're talking about fantasy and sci-fi, and this was my way to write a sci-fi that was based in reality with a little bit of magic. So Xantium is a magic metal. It doesn't exist in real life, but the properties described of it are based in reality. So people can say, that's believable. If we discovered this thing, I can then follow and trust that the human species could do all the things that you're saying you want to do. And this might be the tiniest bits of spoilers, but you've read it, so you'll be able to determine that. This was the idea for the book, and Xantium, with the idea for the book, made it all possible. Me and my wife went to the Tennessee Titans versus Cincinnati Bengals playoff game, January 22nd, 2022. It was her first ever playoff game, and we were stoked. We met up with some of my Discord friends there. The Titans threw an interception on the very first play, and that set the tone for the rest of the game.
That's just tone setter.
That's just how it goes. We end up losing the game to a field goal with 2 seconds left. Evan the Iceman McPherson will be burned into my brain till the day I die. Just the saddest thing, because I think we were the first seed. Henry had like 1,800 yards that season. We were just rolling, and we lose. So we drive home the next day, 13 hours straight. And it's about 8 o'clock at night. We've been in the car for 10 hours. And I go, in X-Men 2, I'll set up the premise first. In X-Men 2, Magneto's locked away in prison, and he is able to lift a security guard with his metal controlling powers because he has too much iron in his blood. And I said, what if the government could control your body in the same way that Magneto did to that security guard? For anyone who likes Avatar: The Last Airbender, essentially bloodbend. But on a governmental fascist control, like that grand scale, that's terrifying. And I was like, okay, how do we make that real? And that's where Xantium came into play. Just a generic, standard, made-up metal name. Platinum, titanium, Xantium. It's real enough. The name really doesn't matter. But my interesting twist on it was it's an organic metal. And so Xantium, being an organic metal, can store energy, can heal itself, can transform into different properties. And that allows you, via that little bit of magic, to build the world.
I have to say, and maybe it's just because I'm a little slow sometimes, but I'm reading the book and I'm looking. I said that I feel like that's real. So you took that and wrote that very well, because I actually stopped and looked on Google if Xantium was real. So it's so cool to hear that that was part of you creating something very believable. Because if I mean that's the most genuine way to really tell of my experience, that it was very believable. And there's also these traits that aren't so uh, sought after that can happen. So for something that's a part of a story like that, you bring it in early, and it captivates you. Maybe something that I can imagine writing about Zenith. That's why I asked the question. It's like I can imagine writing that down and thinking, um, how will the reader take this idea? And man, it really just kind of came full circle with that answer in my mind. I love that.
And I love your question there. How will the reader take this? And this is a tip for aspiring authors and authors who have done it and kind of know where I'm coming from. Is that was the hardest part about writing. Is I have an entire civilization in between these two ears right here. The reader has no idea what's going on unless you tell them.
Yeah.
I wrote so many scenes with the assumption that you knew all the underlying background of why Xantium exists, where it came from, where it's mined, how it operates. And my beta reader, I only had one for this one, and he was spectacular. He was like, "Hey, where'd this come from? You didn't explain this." And
What
I
a
do
good
want to.
beta reader.
Okay, so we're going to talk about him at the end with the three people you need to talk to. But
Awesome.
I'm going to put this up. U.S. Space Force officer. That was my beta reader. He
And for
is an
people who
author.
don't know, that's an actual part of our military servicemen and women. A lot of people may, and I'm only saying this because I've seen somebody look at this. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that is not something. You may read this because it's very new, so people may not know this, and I think it's important that man is it a man, woman?
Yep, it's man.
That man serves our country in the United States Space Force. Go ahead.
And just to give a little bit more context on that, lots of the branches of our armed services had space operations, typically to do with satellites and above atmosphere operations. And for efficiency's sake, they brought everything under one roof, and now it's called Space Force.
Yes.
But he is wicked smart. I think he has right now 11 novels written in some capacity, and he just published his first one. So he has been rewriting and writing and working, and he has kids, and he just got a new job. He's actually at Blue Origin now, which is Jeff Bezos' space company. So he's going to be building rockets. He is just so smart, and he gave me the word magnetorker. And so that's a technical component in the book that allows transportation in this world. And I was like, rocket boosters and thrusters. And he's like, there is no thrust in your world. And I'm like, but I don't have a word. And he's like, you're looking for this. And he sent me the Wikipedia page for a magnetorker. And I'm like, that's it.
That's
yes.
it.
Oh my God. He's spectacular. And he read it through the very first time, and I wanted to go and edit the first chapter, and he was like, no. I read it all the way through, no stops. So he read it, and I wanted him to read it paragraph by paragraph with every edit that I made. He's like, when it's done, send it back to me. So we went his beta read. I found a professional, newly graduated developmental editor who just graduated college and gave me a free one just to get feedback. which
Wow.
is the luckiest thing I've ever had happen to me. I'm just posting on Reddit, hi, I need people who would like to tell me how bad I am at writing. And boy, did she tell me how bad I was at writing. It was the greatest thing ever. She gave me a 15-page summary of everything. I wish I had it up. We're going to pause there. Hashtag Team Skeff HC. Thank you so much for saying that. That is my umbrella term for me going out and doing good in the world. So if you're on my team, we're going out and doing good in the world together.
I'm glad that I know that. I wasn't aware of the hashtag Team Skeff, and I'm on board, and I will be posting that for sure. AC, man, I've had her on the channel a couple times. She's a wonderful part of the community. Thank you for being here.
So super fantastic. Had the beta reader 15-page summary, and then in the Google Doc, she left comments. And oh my God, when I tell you how powerful your words are, she almost made me not publish from one sentence, a singular sentence in the 15-page full body doc, and every single comment that she left in the whole Google Docs. And there's a scene in chapter 6, which is titled Alone. And you know what happens at the end of that one. She said, this is unrealistic. Humans wouldn't behave this way, because she was German. And I almost broke down, cried, and gave up, because that's how I behaved. And so she's saying, my experience of reality isn't reflective of humanity. And so I just had a ton of conflict with that feedback. And so it took me a long time to just, hey, she is a person reading words on a page. She doesn't know my heart. She doesn't know my feelings. She is just doing her job. And it's one sentence. Move along. And so I was able to get past that, rewrote it, edited it, paid for a hybrid edit just to save a little bit of money. And that is a developmental edit and a line edit at once. Okay. And some editors offer that, some editors don't.
That's great info.
It saved me a little bit of money. And my editor was phenomenal because they communicated live with me. Some people don't. Like the first dev edit that I got for free, she said, you're not going to look at the page. You're going to get it as a full package done in at the end. And my hybrid editor, she made a comment on a line, and in Google Docs, I was like, hey, what do you mean by that? And she would explain what she's talking about. So she taught me how to be a better writer, like using colons, semicolons, M dashes, hyphens. She taught me the keyboard shortcut Alt 0151 makes an M dash. And so I had no idea.
But I have to say that who the hell knows that? That's good information.
Alt 0176 is the circle degrees sign. I've been using that my entire life. I love keyboard shortcuts. Let's talk about Microsoft Excel. We were talking about tangents.
Oh my! You know how many times so there's a couple different ones. Joao Silva, he has and in Spanish it's an enye. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, tilde.
Yes, it's like I've always had to copy and paste the name. So I need to look more into those sort of things, especially the degree sign.
Aaron, we're going to talk about the omnibus at the end, so please do hang around. I will explain my dreams for that towards the end with the what comes next. But let's go back to Excel, this beautiful program that 99% of the corporate world runs off of. That's how I tracked my edits. So
you're a process guy.
Yeah. Okay. Oh man, let's go into process.
Engineer.
Because I am on book 2 now, and I know my process. So I wrote the first novel. First draft had present tense and past tense, first person and third person, with limited and omniscient viewpoints. Oh my goodness. It was like a reader's nightmare. There was nothing that they could understand. Oh, and there was some self-insert as the writer. I was talking directly to the reader, and I'm like, reader, when this happens, you'll want to think this. And they're like, the character isn't saying this. And I'm like, what do you mean? I am the character. And they're talking about character voice. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Okay, I gotta delete that and make it say him like my character wrote that.
That is, oh my gosh, that's why I'm here. I always say this, I'm here if I'm in search of that knowledge. I think that's something as an adult that I found very important to my life, is always trying to find that next piece of what I don't know now. And going into those little nuances about your process is very valuable.
So let's figure out or get to what I ended up on, which works for me, may work for you, may not work for you. My process ultimately comes down to the fact that I cannot ideate and create at the same time. I cannot come up with a situation, a character, a world, a plot device, and write prose at the same time. I have to separate them completely. And
I feel
so,
like that's so I'm just real quick because my thoughts are like coming at me a million miles an hour at the moment. So I'm thinking of doing exactly what you just said. And I can see how that would happen as somebody who has tried this writing thing, very new to us, very, very new to it, which is again why I say these pieces of your story is so valuable to me. Because, for instance, where you're talking author voice, where and tell me if I'm right and if I heard you right. You're writing in what you're hoping your audience is going to remember and feel as you're writing this, rather than inserting it as like a way of saying it in dialogue.
so I'll use an example from the book that I can remember. Um, Maximus was on the Zephyr, which is just a flying motorcycle for everyone to,
Super
not a
cool.
spoiler. It's the coolest thing in the world. If you've
It is.
seen Atlantis, The Last Empire, the Disney movie from early 2000s, they had the floating motorcycles, essentially the same concept. He is just taking a drive to clear his head and to think. And Ryan Skeffington, had a personal thought. If you turn back before the end of a path, it is now the end of the path because you turned around. You didn't make it to the end of the trail, but that was the end of the path because you consciously thought to do so. And I wrote that sentence in there, and I was like, man, that's really profound. You allowing yourself to course correct, you don't have to take things all the way through the finish if they don't service you. And so I was trying to get that concept to people, and I wrote it like Ryan Skeffington was trying to tell the reader, hey, I had this really cool idea and I want you to know about it. And then I had to reframe it to where the main character used his voice, used his experience, and told or had the thought himself to
Uh,
convey that cool concept.
that yes, man, that's it. Because I can see how that would happen. You have this idea, especially as somebody who, I'm speaking from maybe my hypothetical situation, being a new writer and not having a published book out there. How I anticipate these themes or points coming across, these plot points naturally, and I can see how writing that in. But then, not only that, having that editor say, "Hey, this isn't necessarily dialogue." That's the way I'm kind of hearing it, and through characters, through events that you're writing through, rather than saying this sentence here, that's going to convey itself through the natural process of you writing the dialogue, the events happening to the characters. I love that, man. um, I did want to shout out Joshua's question, because very excited for his novel to come out too. His novella is very good. He says, "Does this mean you're a pretty hard and fast outliner, Ryan, or can you occasionally write through the story without a plan? As long as you know things about the world, Sorry if I missed that. All right. No, I think that's a wonderful question, man.
That is a great question, and I love talking about this. I just love talking about writing and books in general. It just gets me going. But I will provide you a comment and just say how spectacular you are at comment tracking. When I was streaming on Twitch, I could do it with light speed because I was either playing a game and I could read chat and divert my attention. But in an interview, you want to give your full undivided attention to the person that you're talking to, and the talent that you have to pick out good questions. Oh, A plus. Yes, so good. I'm struggling, and I did this for 2 years. Okay, so let's get to Josh's question. I am a hard and fast outliner because it allows me to procrastinate. And what I mean by that is I get the ability to marinate with my story, marinate with my world, and come up with ideas at my own pace. And then when I have the ideas fully fleshed out into a plot line, I can then write the prose. And I hope this comes through. These are all just random sentences, random thoughts, random whatever. This sentence: don't underestimate the hole your absence would leave.
Oh, man,
Like
come on.
you just you hear things, you listen to things, you read things, and you're like, I love that concept. And when you spend time with your characters and with your world, you can pick and choose who that concept applies to best. And that creates character voice. Is you as an individual are a collection of lived experiences. I'm gonna circle in me listening to another guy. His name's Alex Hormozy, huge in the sales world. He sells companies for people. He had this to say, and I use this as my character building framework. What would you put a person through to build the type of traits you wanted them to have?
Oh my gosh, dude. That's
And he's
very profound.
Yeah. And I was like, man, what a great way to write characters. And he's like, what is their backstory? Is essentially what he's trying to say is if this person is extremely patient, he probably didn't have one child who was super easy to raise. He probably lived in a household with 6 women and 5 daughters. So
Yeah.
that is why he's patient. If you wanted someone who was resilient, you wouldn't give them the life that I had, which was Halo and video games and good grades. You would give them walking to school uphill both ways through a blizzard with one shoe. That builds resilience. And so, circling back to the outline, I build my plot at the very beginning. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it's that simple. I want this character to do this thing and accomplish this. And then I add details, and then I add characters, and then I add world building. And then as I fill out this outline, I can go back into chapter 1 and say, oh, I heard a really cool thing. That goes great in chapter 2. And then I have my outline built and my story's pretty fleshed out and I know exactly what's going to happen. And then I need to start writing prose. If my brain doesn't have an image, it can't write prose, which I just struggle with. And I don't have the best imagination, so it needs to be crystal clear on what's in my head. And so what I'll do is goals, motivations, characters, actions for every single scene in the book. What are the goals trying to be accomplished in this scene? Because change needs to happen in a scene for it to be interesting. What are the motivations of the characters? So what is propelling the scene forward? Characters. Who's in it? What characteristics of these characters are important for this scene? If you have a very stoic character and you're trying to write a comedy, and it's not gonna work. But if that stoic character is great at one-liners, you have the opportunity to have a really great scene. Have a quip for one of my pretty quiet characters. Character 1 says, "Why do none of you ever take my side?" Character 2, who never says anything, says, "You could try being right more." And
Yes,
I'm
because
like,
that's going to come
this
through
is,
harder
yeah,
based
he
on that
never
character
says
not having
anything.
much to say.
Yep. And so scene one, I write all those things and then I write the beats. I write the we enter scene here, character does this, character says this, character two has an emotional reaction, moves this. I want the reader to feel this. And I have this much of a page of beat by beat by beat by beat of everything that's going to happen, everything that I need. And that's when I get to have creative freedom. Um, that is when my brain will take me away from the outline. I did it today in a fight scene. I had conflict and then a reset. They were like, okay, we're taking a pause, we're taking a breath. And then I was going to have them all like go Super Saiyan, level up a little bit, and then fight again, and then reset. And then it was going to be the climax. And that is a little bit slow. And so instead of that fight, reset, climax, I went fight, reset, Super Saiyan, climax immediately. There was no second reset. And what that did, it made the scene seem realistic. Because when you have the equivalent of Super Saiyans fighting each other, these fights are not going to be conflict free. And so I had to deviate from my outline so that the story would be realistic, because that's what I love about sci-fi is it's magical realism.
So I have a lot of things that I'm very excited to talk with you in the future about, like while I'm going through certain things of the writing process, because I feel like our brains work pretty similarly, especially on the character development part, where in my mind, that I don't remember his name, the sales guy. What would you put? And I put it in my own terms so I would better relate to it later. What would I put a character through to have the traits that I would want them to have? That's very profound, and I think that yeah, that makes sense with your Dragon Ball Z gift. Yeah, 100%. Uh, so I think that's very helpful, man. Gosh, there's so many things I'm trying to like digest at the moment, because
Um,
I don't often get that. I get really good. I'm not saying I don't get wonderful answers, but you're particularly good at going through those steps in a way that I personally can relate to.
and I hope it's helpful for whoever is on the chat today. If anyone else has any just thoughts about writing, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'm sure Matt will get to them. I'm sure I will miss them. But since we're taking a pause, I will see EL's comment right there. Is your first draft plot characters first, plot or characters? Um, I don't know yet because I'm on the second book. I haven't done this enough to realize. I would say that the first one was I had one character. I had to build a plot for that single character to do, and I needed more words because I have the struggle of word count, getting to word count. Most fantasy authors have to cut back because they can write 500,000 words in a year. I struggle with that. And so that is why Lost Souls has like 6 POVs. They don't all get equal screen time,
Right.
but I needed a way to build the world that this main character couldn't see, tell stories that he couldn't see, because he lives in one part of the caste system of this
Mm.
world. And so I needed characters at the upper and lower castes to help you fully believe this world. And so I would say I start with plot because plot is what your characters are going to do. But I go harder now on characters because I think that's really what gets people through a story.
Yeah, and so bibliotheory being here, Aaron, my guy. Uh, I just saw your it relates to this. That's why I'm bringing it up. It's a wonderful review of the blade itself, and we have a little bit of a different view on that. But what we do agree on is the characters, and I'm bringing it up because it plays a lot into what you're saying. For instance, I want to give, and it's no spoilers, not at all. I'm not giving any names or reasons why, but there's a part in the beginning of the book where somebody sticks up for somebody, and it really plays into um, their dynamic, their character building. It's like this person is going to be loyal. This person's going to be not a bully, because that's kind of what was happening. It gave me this greater sense of analyzing it the way that I do now as somebody who wants to write. Because let's face it, once you kind of move into that area where you know you want to write, you enjoy books, you love books, and you also find yourself learning from them and studying them. At least I do. And I feel like at the beginning of a book, when I find this character who is no bullshit, excuse my language, but he
I use
sticks.
a lot of language.
Yes, yes, something that and not too much though. I want to say that there's those books that is like too much. This is
It's
just
for the
enough.
impact.
Yes, there's no. It goes back to like the dark themes, like for instance, highly sexual things or highly graphic things, whether it's violent or sexual. If there's no reason for it, it's hard for me to really, I don't know how to say other than just respect the book. And that's not at all what I'm saying. You use it in a very influential way, 100%. And I love, in fact, I will pick up a book that is itself. You know how I relate most with people who aren't afraid of being who they are. Uh, Especially if you're very different from me, because I get along with people who share qualities that I'm not used to seeing in myself. I find that highly interesting. That's why I love culture, and same thing in books. Um, yeah, so going back to kind of the reason I started on this spiel, character building is so important to me, and I think you did a wonderful job with that. And another reason is I was reading Bibliotheory Aaron, his review on his wonderful website, his blog. He does a great job. It's very pretty. It's put together. It's nice to read.
Bibliotheory.com.
Yes, very easy to get to. Bibliotheory.com. When I looked at your wonderful cover, it says a lot of things to me, and it's cool when I can get those thoughts from somebody else. So, for instance, when I look at this, when I look at your cover, I see futuristic badassery, and then I see kind of plain clothes people at the top, the two at the top, and I like that because there's badassery, and then there's like this human part to it too. But what Aaron saw was Power Rangers, and I'm like, dude, yes, that was like that part of me that like I can't grip exactly what I'm trying to. That was it. It came through to me so much. So I mean, I'm glad to read that's how you saw it.
I've probably seen every single one of your streams since I've found your channel, and it's amazing when people talk about what they think inspired something, because that's where their brain went when
Yes.
it had nothing to do with it. But I can see the connection. So, like, I grew up watching Power Rangers. Tommy's number one.
Oh yes.
But Power Rangers was not something that I had for my formative years. It was when I was like 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, and I didn't carry it through. These characters are the movie Gladiator with Russell
Yeah.
Crowe, my favorite movie of all time.
It's so good.
That is Maximus's helmet. And
3D
Halo.
printed?
No, it is steel.
Oh wow, let's check that bad boy out.
All right, so I was so ready to talk about this. I have to take my headset off for a little bit, but I'll kind of give the backstory.
Brother,
When I
you
was
do
on
it.
Twitch, I had a spiel, like a persona like Dr. Disrespect did, because I wanted to have a character and I wanted to remain anonymous, because Ryan Skeffington was not very good about putting himself out there, because his dad said, if you don't want your grandmother reading it on the internet, do not put it on the internet. Great life advice.
Good advice. Yes.
Don't put anything on the internet you don't want grandma reading. And so what was my persona? Well,
Are you not entertained?
I know the spiel 100%, and people could redeem channel points, and I would recite the spiel or his speech at the very end. And Gladiator was a big one, and then Halo was a big one. But for this, with my persona,
Yes.
I got this helmet and it was stainless steel covered in like oil. So I got it powder coated so it would not deteriorate. And then I put a softball helmet pad in there
Oh
so that I
yes.
could wear it while I was streaming. I've never written with the helmet on, but now that I'm sitting here saying that out loud, I might consider the idea.
Yeah. I'm gonna wait till
Um,
it's set. Can you hear me? I don't think you can. Now
okay,
you can
we're
hear me.
good.
Yeah,
Yep.
now you can. So I can imagine. So, man, can I ask?
Yeah.
When were you born?
94.
Okay, so I was born in 90. We grew up basically the same time, man. I remember when Gladiator came out and just how badass Russell Crowe. And it's just like one of those movies who formed who I am as a man in many different ways because I'm sure that you and I could talk about the themes and the characters and Gladiator for hours. But what I took from that is like loyalty, respect, and then how could you not wear that helmet, especially as comfortable as you've made it, and just not like write the most epic shit ever?
I also think one of the biggest things about Gladiator, it's a revenge story.
Oh
Someone
yes.
did you wrong, I'm gonna fuck you up for it. Like, it's 2.5 hours of him staying alive just so he can take someone with him.
With a stabbed, like punctured
Oh,
lung.
yeah, and we're talking about, what makes a character. Maximus, spoilers, gets stabbed in the gut before his fight with Caesar. He, being a lesser man, would have probably died. But what we showed throughout that entire movie is he went through trials and tribulations to build the resiliency to become the man that could take down the emperor. Like,
Papa
brilliant
Darkness
storytelling.
agrees.
I love that movie so much.
That's Papa Darkness, my dad. So he, I remember, in fact,
Salute, Papa.
I remember me and him would probably watch this movie. I mean, 50 times together. I'm sure of it. It's one of those that always comes on FX or whatever those movies. But when it first come out, man, it was one of those you just I'm glad that you and I have that similar feel, man, because I don't think there's any more formative of a movie for me personally. I had it on VHS. Uh, that's some OG things for you youngins out there
And
because
if you take the plot of Maximus in Gladiator and take the plot in Maximus of my story, Maximus in Gladiator starts out as a gladiator, falls, becomes a slave, and then rises to something that can conquer an empire. Maximus in mine starts as a upper caste individual,
mhm.
falls through the character, and then goes through an ascension, and we'll leave the rest for all the details. um, but that movie had so much impact on this story.
My guy EC Greaves, man, thank you for being here, man. He's one of those guys that like when I had 0 subscribers, he was like, "Man, I can't wait to talk to you about my book." Just one of those solid community guys. So many of them I see in the chat. He's just the most recent, and man, just respect him. And he had a chat with I didn't get to catch all of it live the other day because I was getting ready to chat with maybe it was Mark Lawrence that day.
Was it yesterday he was on with Kay?
I don't think it was
Oh,
yesterday. Was
okay.
it yesterday? It might have been. I'm so lost when it comes. I remember catching
You
some of
work
it.
every day.
I try to keep it entertaining and knowledgeable. But yeah, man, it was a wonderful. I went back and watched it, and everything you're doing, Ed, I just love it, man. I can't wait to have you back on. So I just really appreciate you being here. And
Yeah, community is super powerful. So for everyone who shows up day in, day out, offering comments, I can just put the +1 to how amazing support is for a creator to make it feel like what you're doing is worth it.
Ryan, you live that as if I can tell that that's deep seated in you because lovely dog, by the way. That bad boy just pat girl, whatever. It's a
Uh-huh.
beautiful dog.
So, fun story about Sammy. She's a 95-pound Great Pyrenees Lab mix who just tore her ACL and cost me
Oh,
$3,500 in leg surgery. So, We're not happy with her right now, but she's fine.
Well, I was just kind of, you live that. What you find, I'd like to hear those deep seated feelings because, well, and really morals and values, because what you just said you appreciate, you live that way. Anytime I look over here in my chat, whether it's with a big author and an indie author that has one book out, or it just doesn't matter because everybody is so special to me. And I can tell that that's the same way you feel about it. You're always over there. So this is my paying homage to you because you're that guy.
I appreciate that, and we'll pay homage to Book Mama real quick because gotta shout out the support systems. My T-shirt gets here on Tuesday. I cannot wait.
I have to say, man, that's so cool. Yeah, my wife does the graphic artist thing during the day, and like does shirts. And I have to shout this out now. We're not taking orders yet because she hasn't perfected the process. But this is Fear the Beard.
I love
Jim,
it. I love it.
The old supplement, and of course I've got bookshelves on here. And yes,
oh, that's so cool.
I do have this will be customizable. You can pick the names of the books that you want on your shelves, and anybody that is ever in my chats, your books are on there, your books on there. There it is, right?
That is so cool.
So
that's
yes,
amazing.
and then I was just had to shout it out. She works so hard at being creative, and she's so good. It comes so like effortlessly to her.
Stanley Cup who? Book Mama Cup.
There you go. Man, this has been one of my favorite conversations. I'm going to go on to something that I found. So, something you did that I think a lot of people would find useful is you have a media package that you give a little bit about yourself, and I think that that's wonderful to introduce yourself to a YouTuber or a reviewer or a fan of yours. I think it's a wonderful thing. And part of the background that I find very fascinating is your the hobbies that you do that you monetize. One being your app. Would you tell us a little about your app? I think it's just incredible, guys.
So my wife actually made the comment about this earlier today. She was like, "Are you going to tell them what I call you?" And I was like, if it comes up. She calls me the hobby hopper because once I find something and I've invested all the necessary resources to get that hobby up and running, I make my first dollar on it. I'm like, I don't like this anymore. Time to do the next one. So I have a whole wood shop in my garage, some tools in the garage that don't get used very often. But the app is much bigger than that. And so there's a few details in there. Starting with me getting laid off at 23. I got my new job and everything was going well.
After your alma mater graduating from
Texas A&M was my undergraduate degree. And then I got my MBA at the University of Oklahoma. This is where the app idea came from. I told myself, Ryan Skeffington, you are going to be the most employable oil and gas professional of all time. You're never going to get laid off ever again. Yes, sir. And I got through my first year of my MBA doing oil and gas sooner. And I didn't like it. I was doing geology courses and petroleum economics courses, and it wasn't what my heart wanted. And it was the end of the first year and I had to choose my second year curriculum. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be an inventor. EL, I just found out via your Twitter page today that you're in Dallas. I'm from Arlington, so we can be friends. I promise we can be friends. That I always wanted to do something creative in the business world. Like I said earlier, I was a closeted creative because my heart kept drawing me to the creative sectors, and it never ended up. But I said, hey, do it. And I changed all of my coursework to entrepreneurship. And this is where the only reason I was able to write a book came from. My very first entrepreneurship teacher, his name was Mark Roberts. He was a 65, 66-year-old man. He had been through the ringer ran a car dealership for 20 years, built houses, uh, bought land in Florida after a hurricane, lost $4 million because the development didn't build out. And he was like, you know what? He sat his family down and said, I messed up. We're going to have a shitty life for a little bit, but I promise I'm going to get us back on track. And they're very well off. His son lives in San Francisco as a VC, venture capitalist, invests in startups. He's doing A-okay. He's a super cool dude.
He sure is.
But Mark in this class had us review business case studies from Harvard. They would write analysis and summaries of new businesses. This business launched. Here's all the things they did. They're struggling. What can they do better? What would you have done differently? And I loved these things because I got to be creative. I got to ideate. I got to sit with them. I got to come up with fantastic ideas that I thought would have worked for them. And I sat with him after class because I wanted to spend as much time with him as I could because he was someone I looked up to.
We all know those type of guys, and I think EO
Mhm.
kind of puts it out there wonderfully. The old
You're
guys want to
exactly
share
right,
everything
EO.
with the young ones.
So it was. This is probably where I'm going to cry. So I'll try and get through this story. I was in his course going through it. I knew I liked this man and wanted to spend as much time with him and learn as much as I could from him. And then my dad passed away. He was 50 years old and he passed on the Jim Frost of days. So no, Robert Frost. Sorry. Robert Frost, I think, wrote this. I'm butchering it. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was my dad's 50th birthday that he passed. He was sitting on the beach in a navy blue swimsuit wearing a Kenny Chesney straw cowboy hat. He died in paradise. And so there was no better place on this earth that he could have been. And so I like to think that his heart was full on the day that he had to leave us. But I was in the middle of his class when that happened, and I thought about dropping out. And I was like, I can't. My dad wouldn't want me to do that. So I kept pushing, and I latched on to my professor as best I could to just maintain my sanity. We were talking after class one day, and he said, I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm not very creative because in my mind, I couldn't draw. And that's what I associated creativity with. And I was like, I'm not very creative, but I work really hard on these essays because I enjoy them. And he was like, Ryan, you're one of the most creative students I've ever had. And just because of the ideas that I was able to put forth in these what if scenarios. That might be why I like sci-fi, is I get to dream of the future. Yeah. And I took his class that semester, and I took his class the next semester, and as many courses of his as I could take, I took of his. And then I took another entrepreneurial class where we had to come up with a product. We had to solve a problem. Everything that I had been learning in his courses put in reality. And it was, how do you avoid long drive-through lines at Starbucks? Because we had just waited in the longest Starbucks line that I had ever waited in. I was like, how do I never do this again? And I was like, automate the workers.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you take the robots that make cars and you make them make coffee, and you can use a mobile app to order ahead, and via GPS you can track down to the 10-second of when that person is going to arrive, and you can have a locker system that they can unlock with a fingerprint, and it'll be the most efficient coffee order pickup method in existence. And my entrepreneurial professor was like, that's a horrible idea. Nothing in that is going to work. Have you
Very
been
costly.
in the real world?
Very costly.
A barista makes $8 an hour. Why are they going to spend $6 million on a robot? And I was like, dang it.
Yeah. Good in theory, though.
I liked the idea. And so I did a pitch competition on Twitch. And I pitched my idea, and I had a really good time with it. And the presenter at the very end of it was like, do you want to make this a real thing? I was like, well, I did at the time. Yeah, I do. I do want to do that. And there was another person who gave a pitch on a social experience, getting people back out into the world after COVID because everyone was on lockdown. He lived in Los Angeles where it was a $500 fine if you left your apartment. And so we got together on Discord, we got into Google, and we got into Docs, and we started coming up business plans, and we came up with Cheers, the app that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And the Cheers app is a mobile ordering app for bars, breweries, and other high volume venues. And how many times did I say that when I was trying to raise money?
I can hear it in the.
1,000 times.
I can hear it.
And so that experience was so transformative of me as an individual, but it didn't yield anything real in the real world, but it transformed me as a person. For this startup, I did front end design, I did prototyping, I did sales, I did marketing, I did investor updates, I did balance sheets, I did our accounting, I did legal, I was the chief operating officer. There was two of us, and I took it on the chin every single day. But like you said, I'm able to look at this after I've done it. What would you put someone through to build in the traits that you wanted? I can handle anything now based on the experiences that I've lived. One of the most gut-wrenching experiences of that entire process was coming around to re-register the business and pay our yearly filing or our yearly taxes, and we hadn't made any money. We had only invested money, so I didn't expect to pay any taxes. I get on the Delaware Corporate Commission website, and I put in Ryan Skeffington logging in for Cheers. I'm a business person, and we had 10 million shares of the company, and they said I owed $83,000 in taxes because we had assigned ourselves these made up 10 million shares. And it was 6:30 in the morning, the day before it was due. My wife was asleep and the house was quiet, and I couldn't scream. And so I paced. I sat with that knot in my stomach for an hour waiting for customer support to open up, Googling furiously, how do I fix this? Because this isn't right. I've been wronged. The tax man is wrong. And I just had to go to a different screen and say, no, the shares were worthless and I owed $450. So at the end of the day, I'm fine. It's no big deal. But in that split second moment, the feeling that I had is incomprehensible to me telling you that story. And so when someone gives you advice, you can understand it and you can internalize it, but until you go and do it and you feel the emotions that rock that experience into your core, you have no idea. It's the same with writing. Until you write that first draft, you have no idea that sense of accomplishment of hitting the end. You're going to get there. You're going to do it. It's going to be great.
You've shared a lot of personal things, so I'm going to share a quick personal one. One of the characters that I want to write is going to find themselves in a situation in which they thought they understand the meaning of lonely, right? Maybe just breaking up with a girlfriend is lonely to some people, or whatever. Anybody can relate, and they're all valid for sure. There's a part in my life where I just remember this time. It was a very dark time in my life, but lonely is not even like the tip of the iceberg of how I felt in this moment. And I think you've really hit home the importance of writing a character like that for me. There was a very dark time in my life where I was into things that took me to rock bottom, substances, and now been sober for a while. But I remember, thank you, being kind of thrust into a situation, into a city, and walking out of jail. Uh, and I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have somebody I could call because of my own actions. And I think it's so important to tell of those deep-seated feelings that you've come across in your own life. And I think that character is going to be special. And I think talking with you has really encouraged me more to tell that story through a character.
See, now you're gonna make me cry. I love that so much, and thank you for being vulnerable with all of us.
Yeah.
That people talk about what it means to be manly, and I say being the person you want to be is the most manly thing you can do. And so, if you want to open up your heart to the world so they can learn from you and share in your experience, that's the manliest thing you can do on this planet.
My man.
And I hope that you go through the same experience that I did. We don't get the opportunity as young boys, young men, and then men to spend a lot of time with our emotions and talk about it and deal with them. And so, me going through that app was a distraction. I was trying to live up to the legacy of my father after his passing, and I wasn't allowing myself to grieve. And so, after he passed, I had my day job, I had the app that I was building. I was consulting for a company that was trying to build something brand new, so another startup, and I was writing this book, and I was trying to be a good husband.
Mm.
And so, all of those things pulled me away from myself, and writing gave me the opportunity to sit with those emotions. If you have the emotions and you internalize them and you never sit with them, you're not processing them. And so I'm gonna step away and pull two vinyls off the wall.
Grab it up, brother. I love when people grab show and tell items, by the way.
Okay.
It's absolutely so fun.
We'll get to the second one because that relates to the story, but this one relates to the emotions. So this is a band called Dayseeker. The album is called Dark Sun. I got to see them in concert, and my wife got me this signed vinyl. They are probably one of the most emotionally powerful bands for me that I've ever come across. They have an album prior to this that has such deep emotions of anger and hatred and power, and I reflected with those, and they got me in my feelings and they got me crying, but I wasn't one for one relating to the lyrics. I was just sitting with the feelings because the music got me to feel that way. And they dropped this album, and it was 1 year after the lead singer's father passed away, and we're roughly the same age, and he's got a 2-year-old, and he released a song called Neon Grave, and it is a tribute to his father. I am gonna pull up the lyrics so that I don't botch them, but
I can see while you're pulling that up, I can see I love this because in the Discord, which you're very much active, and I love that. I can see why you responded the way you did to when I was talking about Breaking Benjamin and their lyrics.
I love Breaking Benjamin so much. One of the bands I regret never seeing live. So I found the lyrics, and the ones that hit me the most was, "Can heaven fall into my lonely earth? Because hell is when I know you won't return." And it is the realization that you're not coming back, and it just sucks. And like you said, I'm lonely, and lonely is a powerful word, but I think you add despair to that loneliness, and it is a exponentially compounding effect on the human soul. And so music has been a tremendous inspiration for my writing and for my emotional capacity to process how I feel. That's what I did when I was a teenager. I just never knew how to say that out loud is I would seclude myself into my room, put on some loud, angry music, put on something with deep, deep bass and guitar, some screaming.
Yeah.
And then I would sit with my feelings and I would feel better. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew.
No, Montague's absolutely. Lyrics are the poetry, and I didn't really. I was talking to a woman. She is a poet, and I can't think of her name because I can never think of anything when I want to think of it. But she was on the channel, and she sent me her poetry, and he said something along the lines of lyrics are poetry, and I hadn't really thought of it that way. So right.
I have been mentally writing a poem, and I haven't written anything down, but I'd like to just go off the cuff and share it with the world. And maybe if I come back and listen to it, I'll refine it and I'll outline it and I'll turn it into a creative process. But my whole life, my father paved the way for who I would become. When we would go hiking, he would choose the mountains and lead me up the trail. Then one day in the bitter cold, I chose the mountain that I was going to climb. Up the hill, I would tell him how excited I was to get to the top. I would stumble, he would stumble, I would fall, he would fall. We would both get up together. And when we got to the top, we sat down and looked at the view. We hadn't made it to the top, but this was his peak. I sprinkled his ashes and he flew away in the wind. And I looked up and said, my peak is way up there.
That's it right there. I'm very, very thankful you shared that with us, man. That's one of those things that it's words in a sentence, right? But it's more of a feeling.
Yeah, words are powerful because our brain is connected to our heart and we can feel it.
We're connected. I think maybe we were separated at birth, perhaps, but we're brothers from another mother, I think.
I'm going to make a joke and take off the headset one more time and say, I got the hair and you got the beard.
There it is. It's official. I love that.
And so music is phenomenal. And people may or may not know this. So I'm gonna pull this up, and this might be an Easter egg for you. Easter eggs are my absolute favorite thing about writing. I just watched Attack on Titan, and Attack on Titan has Easter eggs every single episode. So I hope this comes through. Okay, we're gonna move it a little bit closer. So these are the chapter titles for the book. Those chapter titles are the song names for this album, Deep Blue by Parkway Drive. And so,
oh my goodness.
The reason I wrote the plot that I did is because this album tells a story about an individual. That's where the struggle for purpose, loss, and trying to make something of someone's life comes from. In the beginning, samsara. Samsara is a word that means the cycle of life and death. When something dies, it is reborn again. And so when you get to the album, you have died and been reborn again. And so the album tells a story of recirculating life. The songs then go on to talk about an individual who wakes up into his world. The third song, Sleepwalker, we sleepwalk our lives away, falling into shallow graves. Oh my goodness, you are going through the motions of your own life. And then it talks about him getting angry about the world that he lives in, and he was determined, and he was told that he was going to be so much more. And the millennial generation that we grew up in, go to college, get a good job, you're going to have a great life. Go to college, get a good job. Why do I feel so hollow inside?
Yeah.
Where did I diverge from what you told me was going to happen? You promised me fulfillment, but it's not here. It's not in the job that you told me to go get. I try and rephrase this with young men that I'm talking to. It's, don't ask yourself what you want to do when you grow up. Ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to become? Because your worth is not on how much money you make. It's the type of person that you are. Made me feel things with that album I didn't. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it took me 8 years to read the lyrics. I just needed the angry screaming. And then I read the lyrics and someone did a rhetorical analysis of the album. I was like, oh my God, there's so much more to the world that I have yet to uncover. And I get to deep dive. And now I went from being a guy who would never watch a movie more than one time because I knew it was going to happen to
Yeah.
now I can't not critically analyze something 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times because I've mesh and vibe with their artistic journey. And I'm like, oh, why did you do that? Why did you add that dialogue here? What is the meaning of this? How are you going to bring that back later? And it is so cool when you get to go on a journey like that with other people's art. And I cannot wait to read your book.
All right, man.
You got to guess.
Yeah. Parkway Drive. What was the name of the album, by the way?
The album's name is Deep Blue.
Deep Blue.
And I got
Definitely
a little
ready.
tangented like I always do.
Oh my gosh, dude! This I've had this month the most wonderful experience. Deep Blue.
Yeah, and I had a goal before we started chatting that I'll tell you about at the end of the call.
Okay.
But the album dives down into Pressures, which is the 7th song. It's the middle song. And that is the turning point of the character arc. And a really fun fact about that song, at the exact halfway point, the guitar does a riff. They do a synthesizer noise and they play that exact same riff backwards. And so the song goes front to back from the middle because the character is reversing their trajectory of their own life. And I'm like,
that's deep, dude. It's just one of those things that if you didn't know that, how could you appreciate it? Like,
yeah.
like
I listened to that song 100 times before someone pointed it out. And I'm like, how did I never see that? How did I miss it?
yeah. So I've heard of Parkway Drive. I have, but I haven't, and I'm actually kind of, it's one of those things where, say, I hear somebody's just like so touched or had the greatest experience with a book that I haven't read, and I'm like, oh, I am so excited. It's that kind of feeling. I'm actually really glad that I get to have that experience and hopefully have it the same way you did, because it sounds very much up my alley. So I'm going to be checking both of those bands out, and I really like a book. Like I said earlier, it's hard to, once you've talked about the process and you find yourself involved in it, kind of processing it different. That's one of my favorite things. So
I wanted my book to have readability.
And yeah, an Easter egg is like, those are subtle. That was not so subtle. It was very, yes, I totally, it is an Easter egg, but it's one of those things that will 100% make sense. Sometimes with an Easter egg, you're like, oh yeah, I think that could be this, but it's like, there's no doubt.
If you know, you know, and until you know, you don't know.
Yeah. And those are so fun to come across. So I'm so excited for those who get to have that experience. Excited for you. Excited for them. Excited to hear about it. All of that. So a couple things. What are you working on right now, and what is next for Ryan Skeffington?
So I'm glad I get to say this part out loud, but that question is my least favorite question of all the questions that you ask, because it means the interview is coming to an end. It's towards the end, and I'm like, no, it can't be over yet. It's not done. Right. So I prepared for this one, and I got some notes. So like we talked about earlier, this story is going to be a trilogy. And now that you've read the first book, you can reread it from the actual main character's perspective. And I'll leave that with you. So the second book is Eternal Dreams, and it's currently at 80,000 words out of about 100,000. So we are coming to a conclusion of this story. And I would love to ask if anyone in the audience wants to alpha or beta read it. I love feedback. It's one of my favorite and least favorite parts about the writing process.
I mean, so while people are chiming in, I hope you know, just from our experiences before and during this chat, that is always going to be something I want to do, man. I am on Team Skeffington, or Team Skeff. I
Yeah.
believe I put us Team Skeff, and I put it in the chat earlier. But I love that because not only does that say, I'm. This is what it means to me. I know what you said about it, but this is what it means to me. I love what you're writing. I love what you're about. Uh, I can relate with you in so many different ways about your father, about what's important to you as a man, and that's what I mean when and that's what I mean when I'm hashtagging Team Skeff, man. So very much a friend, a fan, and somebody that I will shout from. I like to say, shout from the rooftops about. Um, and I'm proud to say so. So very excited for that, and I will always be the guy who wants to read anything you're willing to send me. So
I appreciate that so much. And I struggle with asking for alpha and beta readers because you don't get what you got with Lost Souls with every book after this, because you got a crisp final product that was exactly as I intended you to see it. And when you alpha read, there's spelling errors, there's
mhm.
scenes that don't add up, there's characters that you're not supposed to know about yet, there's dialogue that's clunky, but you take an active role in creating the next Lost Souls. So there is a little bit of a trade-off, and it's up for anyone who wants to participate in that. It's a different relationship, but both equally as valuable.
And I think so. Just speaking on experience, I have some experience with the beta reading, and as far as alpha reading, I feel like I'm ready to take that step.
Mhm.
And if I was just starting uh, this reading thing or analyzing it for the process and the feedback you would need as an alpha reader, I would probably say not yet. I want to read you and what you're doing, but to take that seriously, I think you have to have a little bit of an understanding first what an alpha reader does, but also that process and what that role means. So, real quick, would you kind of tell everybody what you expect from an alpha reader?
I would say I'm a little bit different in what I want from alpha or beta readers. Um, I am less specific than most other authors. I want everything. If you have a thought about anything, I want to know it, because I am good at discarding bad information. I can't remember his name, he's an actor. He writes screenplays, and he said, let everyone tell you what's wrong with it, don't let them tell you how to fix it. And
Ooh,
so, like we talked about earlier, with the reader doesn't know what they don't know because I have everything in my head. The reader, if every single line they can say, this was good, this was good, this was bad, this is confusing, I don't know this word, I can get into the mind of the reader better and make my product through my skill set and my voice refined and better. They can't do that for me. Now, some people who are writers can say, hey, I would say it this way. And I'm like, that's actually 10 times better than the way I did it. I'm like, they did have a good option, but they didn't they didn't tell me what to do. I accepted their feedback.
and I think that's wonderful information, not only for writers or people who are reviewing books, but to say so. I'm coming at this as a for me personally. Okay, I don't think I would ever. And this, I don't know if you've ever gotten feedback like this, but for me to say a guy that doesn't you can look up and doesn't have a published novel, for me to say how to fix what you're writing, I feel like I would be a little crazy. I don't know. I'm trying to sound a little respectful, but God, I just can't imagine telling a writer, um,
Have you
listen to
never
me.
yelled at a running back that they should have hit the A gap instead of the C gap? I mean, what is he even doing?
As a lineman, I probably have, and somebody who understands the 2 4 6 8, you know,
One,
the
three,
nine
five,
gap.
seven.
Yes, the 1 3 5 and 7 and 9. Yes, absolutely. I probably have. But to those who don't, I would be like, I'm sorry, that's just my experience coming through. But not
But
as
your
not as a writer.
readers have that experience. If you've never written, it doesn't matter because writers don't write for writers, writers write for readers. And
Mm,
if the reader is not coming up with the same image that I am, I've either wrote something that is abstract enough that I give them the opportunity to come up with whatever image I want them to come up with or let them come up with. Or if it's so distinct that they should exactly know what I'm talking about and they don't, I need to fix it.
mm. I like that. I think approaching that a way that I would, or maybe in a way that isn't trying to tell somebody how to do something, is like, I love this part, and then just be 100% transparent. Like, I was confused here. I lost it here. And that's kind of how I would go about that. Just really just the most transparent way. No real opinion. Well, it is opinion, but at the same time, it's your experience. And I would be lying if I said I knew how to fix that issue. I can tell you how I read it and understood it, though.
The perspective of the reader, I think, is what authors are after with alpha and beta readers. I had an issue in like chapter 3. I explained that uh, the magnetorkers use Xantium to fly, and then a reader said, "What's Xantium?" And I'm like, I had never told them what it was.
Yeah.
So that's
It,
where the prologue came from.
That's very, yes. I love that you used that, because that's one of the most distinct parts of the book for me. I don't know necessarily why.
It's a damn good scene.
It is. It really. There's an asteroid. There's things happening. There's bad things that can happen with this thing. It's like it's set in my mind for a reason, and I love that you meant to do it that way, because that's a way that if I was alpha reading, I would say it. If for some reason I came across Xantium and that I had no idea of the scene I'm speaking of, that would just be a natural thing I would say. I love
And
that.
the reason that scene was so good, here's how the sausage is made. It was the last scene that I wrote in the book. I wrote a 10,000 word prologue from an omniscient point of view, like a narrator telling the reader what was going on. And everyone was like, this sucks. It's boring. It's an info dump. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Don't yell at me.
I can very much see how I like putting myself in that situation. I would feel that same way, and I like how you tackled it, though. And I think it was a great way, because you start the novel and you're confused for like 30 seconds until you realize what's going on, and I think that's the fun part, because
I love that you said that so much. I wanted the reader to have no idea what was going on.
well, and at first it's like well, I'm not, and this isn't like it's on the very first couple pages. There's
Yeah.
lines and there's people being picked out, and then you're like, oh, let's go. Like, let's go now. Let's go. So
Well, the second sentence is, I'm going to read it so I don't botch it.
let's hear it.
I'm actually going to read the first two because I love the first one. And I have to
Yes.
practice reading it because I'm going to do the audiobook eventually. And this first sentence is a banger of a sentence, but it has so many words. In the first moments after rebirth, when all those around him writhed on the floor in agony, the youngest traveler on the vessel leaned forward onto the wall that contained him and vomited a thin mustard yellow foam. 3 years in cryo-freeze ended more abruptly than he could have ever imagined. And so the
Yes.
character's waking up from cryo-freeze. He has been unconscious for 3 years. He's dazed, he's confused, he's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yes.
And so you as a reader are also going, I don't know who this is, I don't know how old they are, I know they're young and I know they're confused. And
Yeah.
then you learn more, you walk with them. And then you get his name, and then you're like, I have a connection now.
Mhm.
Now I can go out into the world as a reader.
And that's a wonderful point, man. Like the thing that I say it was emotional, which it certainly is. There's definitely some brutalness. There's some grit, which I love. But what I left out is you're very visceral.
Good
Mustard
word.
yellow foam.
Good word.
It's you can see that it's supposed to. At least me, I'm like, oh, I'm a little sickened, but I feel like that's the most wonderfully sickened feeling I'm ever gonna feel because I'm reading that and I love to read that.
And
Uh,
that brings you down on the pyramid of abstraction. Shout out to Brandon Sanderson, my teacher in writing. I watched his YouTube lectures. If you ever
yes,
watch those, I highly recommend it. I watched
valuable.
them 3 times during drafting. And it takes more words to get down to that level of detail, which is okay if you want them to have that level of detail, which the very first sentence should tell you what kind of world that you exist in, what kind of problems you're going to be facing.
And for the books that I love and really relate to, it's like most of the time those worlds are very hard to exist in. And I was telling Crystal Matari yesterday, like she writes a character Toshue, and very hopeless kind of feeling, and you have to find something to grab a hold of, some sort of hope. And I relate most to those people because I've had those experiences in my own life where rock bottom is in existence. It's a real thing in their life. So I gravitate towards that type of feeling, but there has to be something we're reaching towards. And I think you've done that well. And
And you're talking about rock bottom. I was kind of at rock bottom for a little while, and my fourth grade elementary school teacher came over and visited. And this is just as a writer where inspiration comes from. It's lived life. She said it's okay to visit grief. You just can't live there.
because the reason she said that is I guarantee you she's had that experience where she lived there for a little bit, and it only makes sense if you've lived there. And if you live there for too long, it can really just take your I have no other way to explain it than it just removes that essence in your soul to continue. And I think relating to certain characters or certain situations really helps captivate that novel for me. And I'm really relating to what you've said as far as experience and those feelings, and it comes through in the book. So, guys, it's when another thing really quick, and I know I'm kind of ranting, but when I read sci-fi, I have, and this just happened naturally, a different set of um, expectations, and you hit those, and those expectations being that it challenges me. You wrote in a way that I would explain to my wife in this way. It's an intelligent read. Not that that's probably the stupidest way to say it, but you write in a way that it
John
challenges
Mitten
me.
described it as I don't hold your hand.
Yes, that is a great way in, and I'm so glad you brought that up because there's again, Christopher Rocchio doesn't hold your hand at all. And when I found that I could relate two lovely, wonderful sci-fi books that I adore, yours and his Sun Eater series, in those ways, man, I was just like, there's no way that this guy has no other novels out. It's like this isn't fair. So I
We'll
love
get
that.
yours finished. We'll rewrite it 12 times and it'll be just as good.
All right, man. I love it. So I love hearing what you're working on, what's coming up. I've got a good idea of what went into it. We'll talk more personally about the little nuances that I truly found that I relate with. Tell everybody where they could find you as far as your social networking, if you will, your social media, where you're active the most, where people can keep up with what you're doing, where to buy your books.
Absolutely. So through this whole booktube process, I have become very active on Twitter. Everything of mine is either at Ryan Skeff or at Ryan Skeffington. Uh,
I
Twitter's
do
where I'm
have
most
those in the description, by the way.
perfect. So yeah, I'm on Discord daily. If you need me, my DMs are always open. I know how to spot a scammer and I can get rid of them quick. I
Yeah.
will always answer a question. I will always be there to help. And what I am going to be doing over the next few weeks is using Reels and TikTok, taking this interview, chopping them up, putting myself out there more. So if you want to follow me on those, the engagement would be wonderful. I hate posting content and I hate editing, but I'm going to do better about it.
I didn't know you were on TikTok, dude. I'm not on there much, but I'll be on there for what you're posting.
I don't think I've posted a single video on it, but I will be from now on.
All right.
That's a promise to myself to get these bad boys out there. You can buy this copy on Amazon. I am working to get it on Ingram Spark so we can get some hardcovers. You can DM me and I will mail you a signed copy. Venmo, $15. That's the cost to me, so I don't want to make any money, but I just want to share the story. I think it's on
He's got a
second
great
physical
signature.
paper. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I
when-
practiced that a lot in third grade.
I love it, man. And I have a special place, and it's become a very large place because I'm very, very lucky, and I love this. The indie books that I have that are signed, man, I put on a special shelf, and they'll never leave me. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
yes.
Um,
So on Amazon, and you're working on Ingram Spark, when there's a hardcover, I will absolutely be grabbing that bad boy as well. Oh yes.
and we have to get to the third in the trilogy. That is Immortal Mother. That's essentially fully plotted because I want all of the seeds that sprout in book 2 planted in, or that sprout in book 3 planted in book 2. And so once all 3 of those are out, I am going to do my darndest to get a special edition omnibus hardcover.
Kickstarter.
If anyone knows Broken Binding or Special Place, like call me. We can start planning it now. I've got lead times. We can do marketing. That's where this is going to end up.
All right. That's exciting stuff. And I love hearing that type of ambition too, because man, I totally see that happening. And another, you shouted out a wonderful business that does that for many
The
indie
quality is top notch.
dude. I've been on their list because I want to pay them my money. Like they haven't taken my money yet. I'm on the list. I started at like 7,000. I'm up there at like 1,500 now. I'm excited.
Nice. You're making your way.
I'm making my way up, and I can't wait. But so I love the ambition, man. Love everybody. Go check him out on X, Twitter, whatever you call it, TikTok. Grab the book off Amazon. He does signed copies. I've got a Discord that I always put in the description. He's on that Discord. I don't know the other ones you're on, but he is definitely on mine. And he's got the most wonderful things to put it as far as community, helpful things. And I just wanted to lastly, a few people you think I should chat with in the future. I can't wait to learn this guy's name and the others.
Okay. So here's my stretch goal. I want Pierce Brown on the channel.
Ooh.
So I haven't
Me too.
read Red Rising yet, but I'd like to get to know the author before I pull up a series. And Pierce Brown just is a cool dude. So that would be nifty. And then here is 50-50 opportunity. There's a podcast called Two to Ramble.
Yeah.
They're a book podcast. I love those guys.
They're
They're
great.
so funny. Austin is writing a book right now, and Richard is trying to get him to deliver the first draft. And so y'all could probably talk about content creation, getting through the first draft, the nerves of it all, making the time, because y'all are both busy guys.
Their
So
chemistry is wonderful.
it's fantastic. It's
if you guys haven't checked it out, yes. Oh, you know my time, man. Yeah, that was my favorite cartoon for sure. Pinky and the Brain. These guys, Two to Ramble. That's what two, the number.
Yeah,
two,
the number
two Ramble, and yeah, they're great, man. Their chemistry is wonderful. They've got great content. Check them out.
And then the third one is someone who has helped me a lot during the writing process of Lost Souls. And his name is Ryan M. Patrick. This is his first novel, The Martian Incident. It is a military sci-fi where humans have colonized Mars, and it is like Manifest Destiny all over again. There is
Oh,
warring nations, and a massive conflict happens that just the suspense keeps you on the edge of your seat. And I had to close it one time because he scared me that much. I read the second half of the book in one sitting, um, and Ryan is wicked smart. I don't know how he does on camera, but he's a great guy.
I will absolutely be reaching out to all three. I've, with the Pierce Brown, yeah, I've had Mark Lawrence on. I'm having Adrian Tchaikovsky on here soon. It's going to be, I hope that I can talk with him one day. That would be so fun. And what I found to be one of the most refreshing parts of the community is even those really successful authors are so anxious to just talk about their books. One of the things that I found Christopher Rocchio did, that he does not say no to an interview. He talked about going on a guy's channel that had 30 subscribers. That is why you will see him. He will be here, guys. He will be at the top because he's putting in that legwork. He has a channel. Sun Eater is his channel, and he goes on there and talks about his writing. He gives tips. He gives inside information about the series, but he doesn't say no. And I think that will come back, and that would be one of the most successful, one of the most weighted decisions he'll make. That he doesn't say no, and not that a lot of authors say no. It's just kind of getting a hold of them is the deal. So I will reach out to everybody you said, especially Ryan, because I'm very anxious to speak with him. Not only about kind of like what led to joining the Space Force type deal. And he's an officer, so he's done college. He's put a lot of time and investing into this job that he's got. But it's such a new part of the military. I would love to hear about that and how it's influenced his writing. And lastly, man, Ryan, I would just like to thank you for letting me borrow you for, I know it doesn't seem like it, but 2 hours and 6 minutes. This has officially been my longest conversation on the channel.
Remember that goal I told you about maybe half an hour ago? My goal coming on the channel was to be your longest interview, and Christopher Rocchio at 1 hour and 57 minutes is your longest one.
Yep, we did it. We did it. And I'm so glad, man. I've had such a great time, so many wonderful moments. And I need to also invest in those, a subscription, because they all cost money to break my chats up into like those little short segments, because I think that would help a lot with getting people to come and check out the longer videos. This year I will be doing more recorded videos. Again, more of these interviews because that's just what I love to do. But man, Ryan Skeffington, thank you so much for letting me borrow you. And what you're doing is wonderful. Thank you guys for being here live. I've absolutely loved the chat. It's been wonderful. And for those who will watch in the future as well. And I will see you, I believe. Let me check real quick. You know what? I will throw it up on my Twitter because, again, I have so many interviews that I always forget who the hell I'm talking to.
It's hard to keep up with 31 names in 31 days.
Yeah.
But Matt, it's been a blast and a blessing. Thank you so much for having me on your amazing, wonderful channel. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out in the chat. If you have any questions about Lost Souls while you're reading it, please feel free to message me. It is my favorite thing to talk about. If you have 4 and 5 star reviews to post, please do post them. If you have 1 and 2 stars, please just DM them to me and we can talk about it. But don't put them online.
My man, I don't think you'll get many of those, my friend. And if you do, they have not read the book. They're just some bullshitters. So guys, check out his book, Lost Souls. It's amazing. Thank you again. This has been so much fun. And this won't be the last time I have Ryan. I'm probably going to DM him tomorrow and be like, hey, what about this idea? So again, thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.